Hello everyone, I'm Patti Nunez and I'm going to present Writing an Online Dissertation, an Unexpected Failure. This was part of my PhD research project and its purpose was to look into the academic digital literacy practices around the writing process of an academic paper. In this case, the final research paper that the online BA in ELT students produce for obtaining their degree. In other words, their dissertations. For this purpose, I followed the trajectories of 3 students as they developed their research project and wrote their report until they presented it orally for their supervisor and 2 other examiners and delivered their final version. This is expected to take up to 7 months, most commonly, and within this time there are emerging events and practices that may overlap and intersect and which shape their decision making and problem solution processes. The research context, as we can see here, is fully digitally mediated, and I focus on a specific course, which is the research seminar. For this seminar, it is that the students have to develop their research project. The theoretical framework of my project deals with main 4 areas. The first one is L2 student academic writing. This within an academic literacies framework. What does this mean? Well, very commonly, what we expect from student research writing is usually based on the writing conventions of an academic research article. Reality, however, is much more complicated, as students bring with them a variety of social, cultural, educational, and linguistic backgrounds. So, expectations and reality do not always correspond to each other. Nonetheless, this doesn't mean the students' choices are not valid, incorrect, or deficient. This implies understanding literacy as a social practice. And this is precisely the second area of the theoretical framework of my project. Briefly explained, understanding literacy as a social practice involves considering what people do around a text and how, why, when, and where they do it. Meaning making is central to this, and there are emerging events and practices as well as decision making and problem solving processes taking place. So we are talking about people interacting not only with texts but also with other people in order to make sense of the world and construct knowledge. Then we have the area of digital literacies. But this is not only about people knowing how to use digital resources, but people knowing what to use and how to use it, all of which is emerging and changing within a socio-cultural context. Why to use it, because there is a purpose. When to use it, as it is historically situated. Where, since it involves different domains of life and settings. And therefore, this implies a critical assessment of the use of digital resources and embraces the understanding of literacy as a social practice. Finally, we have the area of emotions. Emotions are widely acknowledged as an important dimension in education and learning. In e-learning, students' motivations and backgrounds must be considered, and students' emotions are precisely the point of intersection between these two. Academic writing is one of the most common ways to assess the students' learning outcomes, especially at a higher education level. And also is particularly an emotional-laden process, especially for second language writers who have to cope with heavy demands on language use and thus it is a major source of anxiety for many students. Now, negative emotions do not necessarily imply failure, but they can certainly feel like it. Novice academic writers, like the participants of this study, are known to struggle with emotions along the challenging process that academic writing entails. And tensions between students or supervisors are commonly expected to emerge. There is a wide range of emotions when writing under these circumstances, and this can influence whether positively or negatively the writing process. Emotions in this project then evidently emerged as an important dimension, one that has even more pedagogical implications in online learning environments that may have been attributed to it. The research approach here was that of a case study because it provides a unique example of real people, that is, the online undergraduate students, in real situations, that is, their academic digital literacy trajectories while writing their final research paper. It's a qualitative approach as well because it studies a variety of experience that explain decisive moments of the student's final research paper writing process, which involve interconnected interpretive practices in context so as to better understand the phenomenon. It's also explanatory because it seeks to understand how events are experienced and why. And it's interpretive because understanding how and why events are experienced entails subjective, interactive, and social construction of multiple realities, considering different perspectives, especially those of the participants. However, the main method was that of a virtual literacy ethnography. Ethnography because I studied a naturalistic setting where members have developed patterns of social interaction, and I was a researcher participant of the project. Virtual because it's research of online environments, and it was research specifically about students' literacy events and practices and how they navigated their ADL trajectories. The main data analysis method was narrative inquiry. I used text analysis and content analysis for a considerable amount of data obtained from a wide variety of sources, mainly digital, in order to construct the students' stories of their experiences. The data I collected for the study came from the research seminar activities that the students had to do along the course. All Eminus interaction, Eminus is the institutional platform, and all the interaction they have among themselves or with the facilitator. All the email interaction the students had with their supervisors, all WhatsApp conversations among the students and their supervisors or the students and the facilitator, all the students' drafts and their final version, as well as the feedback provided to those drafts and final version by the facilitator, the supervisors, and the examiners, and the interviews. Now, let's talk about Shareni's story. At the moment of the study, Shareni was 49 years old. She has Mexican indigenous background. Before entering the VA, she worked as a stylist, but also as an English teacher. Why? Because in her early youth, she lived for almost 10 years in the USA. And people knew about that in her town. So they started asking her to give English classes, even right for schools in there. Once she entered the VA, she was an outstanding student. Right, her GPA was that of 9.57. All teachers were happy to have Shareni as a student, and they spoke highly about her. Her academic digital literacy trajectory, that is the writing of her research paper, took 5 months only, when usually 7 are expected. And she did finish the BA in the shortest amount of time, which is in 2.5 years. However, when the time came for her presentation of the final research paper, the grade she obtained was that of 7. And for her, that felt like a failure. It was 11 at night on a Friday. She was about to submit her final version, and it was then that she realized she felt lost. But let's go back to the beginning of the story. Let's begin with Shareni's project. Shareni's project was an action research study about the impact of a singing context on 6th grade language learners. She had already implemented her action plan by the time she registered in the research seminar, and she was very happy with her results. Her students had worked autonomously, they hadn't complained about homework, they always took their homework, and they seemed very happy to come into the classroom. All in all, she was very proud of her project. Now, for the research seminar, she actually started with a very enthusiastic attitude, as all the time, right? That's her personality. And for her, the activities seemed very easy. But as time went by, things started changing. To begin with, she received feedback for only 5 of the 13 activities established in the research seminar, and the main problem was the feedback was sort of belated. So she had already made a lot of changes in her project when feedback for previous versions arrived. And then she also started ignoring instructions for the activities. As she was not receiving the feedback she expected, well, she thought it wouldn't be a problem then. She was not happy at all with the course, okay? She shares that for her, it was a 20-day course. She was not happy with the results, evidently, and she told herself, why do we need to take the research seminar? Honestly, right? For her, it wasn't helpful at all. If she had received feedback, maybe she would not have been so lost. However, despite this perception that Shareni had of the research seminar as something pointless, along the process, along the course, she actually integrated her supervisor's comments and her own reflection in some of the activities of the research seminar. So maybe she was actually taking them into account, and maybe they were helping her in one way or another to carry on with her project, with the writing of her project more specifically. Now, Shareni's story started to get complicated when she received contradictory feedback from the facilitator and the examiners. So, she was lost in voices, right? She had made all the necessary changes along the process, and then suddenly they were telling her to reverse their changes or make other changes that she had never been told about. Let's see some examples. The first example has to do with referencing. Referencing, admittedly, is a problematic area for both novice and expert writers. And in this case, the facilitator told her one thing, the examiner told her exactly the opposite, and then another examiner made again more changes that contradicted those observations from previous feedback. So it's evident why Shareni felt lost about it. But this was not like the most important contradiction among feedback uh, that Shareni received. This is a particularly important example because it's about Shareni's research questions and objectives. The facilitator observes that metacognitive skills must not be included in the questions. Right? She questions why she's doing that, and that her research objectives and questions do not seem to be consistent. Once one of the examiners received Sechareni's paper, he told her exactly the opposite. That why, as they had talked, she hadn't included this in her research questions. So, Shareni's world was falling apart, and when it actually seemed to fall down was at the very end, when she was about to present her project. And it was those last minute major changes that the facilitator and some of the examiners told her to do that made her feel as if she had failed all along. Along the process, with her supervisor, with whom she communicated at least 3 times on the phone, she actually received very positive feedback. From the examples, we can see that in a first conversation, he told her that it was all very good, and in a second conversation, that she was right to stick to what she believed was the right thing to do, that they could finish if they speed it up. And in a third conversation, he even congratulated her because she was doing so well, that all the hard work was paying off, that there were only little things she had to correct, right? But that she didn't have to worry because she was doing very well. Likewise, in their WhatsApp interaction several times, he told her that she was doing very well. That the interview went very well. That the analysis was going okay. That she hesitated, and she actually asked him, "Am I doing well, or should I go back?" And all feedback she received was that she was doing okay and that she should keep up with the good work. But then, a couple of days before submitting her final version, she received a sound message by the facilitator where she told her that the congruence between the objectives and the research questions was not what it should be, that she had to change it all. And of course, yes, Shareni freaked out. So what did she do? She went to her supervisor. So she wrote to him, right, also via WhatsApp, and she sent him this sound message and asked him what he thought of that. She was expecting to receive some support from him because he had told her that she had been doing well all along the process and that she was okay. Instead, he said that he agreed with the teacher. All she said was that she was going to correct it then. But of course, in her mind, she was like, and you tell me now? For Shareni, this was very frustrating. She had been told that everything was perfect, that everything was all right. And then the facilitator says, no, everything needs to be changed. And then an examiner tells her, no, but it was okay as it was before. And then another examiner had a different idea because she had previously been in contact with the proposal in a previous course, and she had given a completely different opinion. So that's why Shareni felt lost in voices, and why she felt the world was falling apart 2 days before she presented her research project. Shareni also talked about the fact that, yes, she was in a rush because there was this situation in which she had this job opportunity and she wanted to finish as soon as possible. And then everybody told her, yeah, just finish and finish any way you can, and that's it. But she insists that she did do her job and that she didn't receive feedback for corrections in due time. And she had heard of another student who had received feedback from the facilitator, feedback from the examiner long before the presentation, and that had not been her case. So what went wrong? First of all, communication. Lack of effective communication from both sides. Because Shareni admitted she didn't tell anybody how she was feeling, and that by the time they scheduled their presentation, this job opportunity had been lost already. So communication at a distance poses quite a challenge. Shareni was given the idea that everything was going perfectly. Nobody called that into question until the very last moment, but nobody there to stop and think what had happened, because they couldn't be the reason she missed that job opportunity. But still, if she had been making steady progress, why not tell her before that something was not going well? Contradictory feedback and belated was another of the main problems. But obviously, Shareni realized that it was impossible to please everyone, especially at the very last minute. So, frustration in her case was huge. She felt that she had been left alone, that she had not received actual support, and that she had no one to talk to. And she also felt that it was very unfair not to have had the same opportunities for corrections as her classmate. So what now? Well, we are actually trying to make some changes, promoting effective communication among all the people involved in this process. We teachers are sometimes absorbed by our workloads, really, really absorbed. But well, we are trying to make it easier for them as well by socializing the students' guidelines for the final research paper among both supervisors and examiners. And we try to remind students as well that it's their responsibility to keep in touch with their supervisors, but also we remind the supervisors that it's their job to provide sufficient and timely support, and the role of the facilitator in case is monitoring that this is actually taking place. Also, for the research seminar, we are trying to make it more relatable. What's that? Okay, we are trying to give it more teacher presence. details for every unit, different and more attractive interactive layout for the course. Uh, um, we want to make sure also that students feel that they can contact the facilitator if something doesn't seem to be going as expected, and make sure that they know they have someone else to talk to along this process. It is vital that the students do feel the teacher's presence somehow. And well, there is contradictory feedback, and contradictory feedback with capital letters. Yes, we have to avoid this time of problems. We have to define, we are working on defining the roles, the exact roles of the facilitator, the supervisor, and the examiner, and to promote consistent supportive practices of the students so that they feel they are being supported and that they are being treated equally as well. And well, that's all. Thank you very much, and I will be pleased to be receiving any questions. See you.